Hello and welcome back to the Goat Cave podcast. Today we sat down with Shredder Brakeless Drew, who's a local rider from Hamilton. Check out that episode after this, but today's episode is actually kind of a big deal. We have one of the BMX legends, I would say. On top of being a five-time medalist at Xgames, he has released some of the best video parts in the biggest videos, including Anthem 2, Kinks Safety First, Demolitions Last Chance, and of course, Wide Awake Nightmare. And if that doesn't convince you that he's one of the best to ever do it, he also won NORA Cup in 2010 for Dirt Rider of the Year. When he isn't doing the cleanest turndowns and no-foot cans in BMX, he is the host of Palaver BMX, a BMX podcast. I'm super excited to say that we are talking about none other than Chris Doyle. Chris, it's an honor. How are you?
Doing great, man. Thank you for that intro.
Alrighty. So the way I like to start at my podcast is let's go back to 1993 and talk about when you first got into riding. How did you get started?
Gosh, I think it even goes further back than 1993 because I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't have a BMX bike. And I always, for me as a small kid, BMX was just, Evel Knievel was really popular. Like I'm talking like the 80s. And I always thought of myself as like a daredevil or something like that. So being on a BMX bike was just another way to like have fun and be dangerous. And I was always jumping off curbs and like curb cuts and riding wheelies and things like that. And I think 1993 was when I really started to notice BMX as an actual thing. I started noticing magazines in the supermarket. I started seeing like things on TV, like little. There's like a Nickelodeon television show called Wild and Crazy Kids. I remember seeing like a program on there. But so I started noticing that BMX was an actual thing that other people were doing, and then the popularity of BMX in my town in Cary, North Carolina, was huge, and I met a lot of other kids that were into it as well, and it just kind of started to go from there. And we had this big undeveloped piece of property in the middle of our town, and BMX was so popular. Like you could go down to this place where I wouldn't call them trails, but they're like jumps, and there would literally be like 50 kids on BMX bikes, and sometimes even more than that. Sometimes like maybe 100 kids. Like it was so big, and so I just kind of fell into it and did it. It was like it became one of those things that we all kind of go through. It just consumed my every thought, and just wanted to be on my bike constantly. And I would say that was around like 93, 94 when I really, really fell in love with it.
Wow, man, that's awesome. It's so cool to hear that like there were so many kids just into jumping bikes, like not even BMX in general, but like just really into it. That's like definitely played a big part in what what you've done, I would say.
It definitely was a great springboard for me to like really get into it. Just having so many people to ride with, and it was crazy. I remember like being in middle school, and, like all my friends and I would race on the weekends. We'd go to like the local racetrack. We'd race, and then we'd talk about it all week at lunch, and then like go race on the weekends. It was a really it made it really, really fun. It was really, really pure. And I think a lot of that has to do, like, I don't think BMX is as popular now as it was back then, just because there's so many other things now that kids can be into, both good and bad. And I think there was just less options back then. And like me and all my other friends, we did other things. We played other sports, but BMX was always like my thing that we really loved.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I would agree that there's so much more nowadays than there was back then. Like obviously there's so many kids that are really into video games. That's a big one right now, obviously. And I think BMX is one of those things that like for a lot of people, it'll always be like one of the most important things to them. And I think it always starts out kind of the same way that you were describing, where it's basically just you with a bunch of buddies. Like, I've on episode 32, and that's always my first question for people, and it's always sort of similar, which is awesome. I really like that. We can all kind of go to that one place, I guess.
Yeah, most people that I know get into it for for the pure reasons, or the more noble reasons. Like, you don't meet a lot of people that are like, oh, I wanted to go to the Olympics, or I wanted to like make money, or whatever. Like, most people are pretty pure when they start out.
Yeah, exactly. So, can you tell us a little bit about your first real BMX setup? It was a Diamondback Assault, right?
That was my first like legit bike. Like I told you before, I always had a BMX bike, but like we're talking like sometimes they were like Kmart bikes, or like bikes that I'd like kind of traded other kids in the neighborhood and just kind of pieced together. But the Diamondback Assault was like my first like real deal. I remember it was like my first bike with an actual freewheel. So and it was we had just moved to North Carolina when I got that bike. I got it for Christmas that year, and it was like my ticket to like. I didn't have a lot of friends because we just moved, and like it was like my way to get out, like explore my new area that I was living in, and meet other kids. And that's when I started to meet so many kids that rode BMX, and yeah, the Assault was like the first bike. It was like all chrome. Um, Thinking back on it, it was like really, really cool. Like, it seemed so cutting edge, which I'm sure if I looked at a picture of it now, it just looked, pretty corny. But it was like my only Christmas present I got that year, and I was just so psyched on it. I kept it for a long time too. I probably rode that bike for another like 5 years before like getting anything better.
Wow, man, it's crazy to think that it lasted that long too. I always think back and I wonder how long those bikes really lasted because like I've rode frames for 2 years and they end up like snapping on me. But I think it all depends on like the kind of rider that you are. Bikes were obviously heavier back then too. Not to say that they were stronger, but I feel like once you get into lightening things up, it really depends. Obviously, there's a lot of like I think most companies now have it figured out and like everything is pretty strong. You can't really go wrong with any company at this point.
Right, right. And plus, when I mean, for those 5 years that I had the bike, I was smaller myself, and I probably, but then again, it's probably pretty hard on it because I was probably like hitting a lot of like just fly out jumps and curb cuts and things like that. So I don't know how it lasted that long, but it was a great bike.
Do you ever wish that you were able to have that bike now just to look back on it?
I've never really even thought about that until just now. I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to have that bike, or at least just have a picture of it. Um, but now, yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, it'd be cool to have it. But I don't even know where I'd put it. And I'd probably geek out on it for like a week, and then I'd forget about it. So I don't know. Maybe it's better off just living in my memory.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I always wonder if I would want those bikes. Like I've kept pretty much all of my old frames that I've snapped, but most of the time, like right now, they're not even at my apartment. They're at my dad's house, like in the basement somewhere. So yeah,
Yeah, uh, people hit me up all the time. Now that we have like, there's all these mid school Instagram accounts and mid school sites where people hit me up all the time asking for like if I have old stuff from like the late '90s or even like the early millennium, and I'm like, I didn't keep anything. Like, everything I either used until it was broken or I just like gave it away. So like I probably get hit up like once or twice a week from people that are looking for mid school bike parts. And it's like, sorry, I don't have any of it.
it is kind of cool that that's become a really popular thing. Like those are some of my favorite Instagram pages where they just show mid school clips. Like it's crazy to look back at those and see the raw talent and style that a lot of these guys had that they were, throwing down. And like, there's absolutely nothing to say bad about the BMX nowadays. I think that BMX just went through a transformation, obviously, right? Like, just like anything with life. Um, but I think that's why a lot of us really like that. It's just a nostalgia thing, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Some of the riders that you looked up to when you were younger.
When I was that's a large list. I'll try to hit the major ones. I'd say like, man, I really liked Joey Garcia a lot. Not only for his riding, but his whole demeanor on his bike. And I can tell you a story about Joey in a minute. But I liked Joey Garcia a lot. I liked Chris Bennett a lot. My biggest influence, if we're talking just purely about the riding, was Brian Foster. Just like the style. He was a really fast racer, like one of the best racers. Could win the dirt jumping contest and the race in the same weekend. And not to say that I just liked the winner, but like even his style on the racetrack when like the guys started to get really big, like people, you could tell a lot of the AA pros really started working out, but like BF just looked like a skinny kid. And he would just like, you could tell he didn't have the same amount of power as the other racers, but he just had so much skill that like he could just utilize the track in a different way that like his competitors couldn't. And he would, he was just as successful without having to take steroids or, work out a ton or whatever. But I'd say Brian Foster was my biggest influence. And he still is to this day. Like I love that dude. And I'm lucky enough to, like all those guys that I just named, like now all those guys are pretty good friends of mine. And I think that's what I'm most appreciative of is like, looking up to these guys and wondering what they were like as a kid and then like getting to know all of them and to be friends with them is really, really awesome.
Yeah. And like, it must have meant a lot to you to be able to have a part in Anthem 2 with Brian, right? Like if you looked up to him for so long, he had clips in that video as well. And like both of your parts were incredible.
Well, just to have a part in Anthem 2 in general, just to be in a Stu Johnson video for me was that was like a dream. And then just with the lineup of riders, all the talented guys, to be one of the guys that was picked, because Stu could have picked anybody in BMX, and they would have jumped at the chance to be in that video. And just to be one of those guys really, really meant a lot to me. If you don't mind, I'm going to go back and I'll tell this story about what I loved so much about Joey Garcia.
Yeah, please do.
Joey, he won the 1996 X Games, and it was just a set of quads. It was just two jumps, and TJ Lavin was like the hero, like the television hero, but he was just backflipping the last set like every other run, so he was like the crowd favorite. But Joey was doing like all these bar spin variations, no for the can-cans, just really smooth, really stylish. And like I said, TJ kept backflipping. And this isn't a slight on TJ at all, because I love TJ. But so Joey Garcia wins, and when they announced that he's won the X Games, like you see the whole crowd just booing, just boo. And I was like, man, that's kind of messed up. And so Joey, he's already won. He puts his helmet back on, goes to the top of the roll-in, goes through the section and backflips the last set perfect. And I remember like thinking, oh, and then of course the crowd goes insane. And I remember thinking like, whoa, he could do backflips the whole time, but he won it doing like all these like smooth, stylish tricks. That had like a huge impact on me. It was like, you can do the things you want to do. You can ride how you want to ride, and you can still be rewarded for it. You don't have to just play to the crowd or what you think the judges are going to like. You just kind of do your own thing, and you can still be successful. And Joey was so humble. Like it was because like I said before, like his attitude off the bike, and then like his riding on the bike was really meant a lot to me growing up.
That really reminds me of the story between Chase Hawk and Drew Bezanson at Texas X Games. Sorry, there we go. Yeah, a Texas X Games that happened a couple of years back, where it was a bowl contest instead of a park contest, and a lot of people were upset in the BMX world, at least, that Chase Hawk won it and that Drew Bezanson got second, because they thought that like the tricks that he was doing were still, trust me, they were insane. But like when you look at how much of the course he used versus like Chase Hawk used versus Drew Bezanson, it was way more. And I just remember it being like a pretty big controversy, and somebody actually went out and they had like a aerial shot of the course, and they drew where Chase Hawk's lines were throughout it, and then they drew where Drew did his lines, and it kind of made a lot of sense, at least to me. Did you ever hear about that at all?
Oh yeah, I was at that one, and yeah, a lot of people had a lot of different things to say, and there was a lot of good points that were made. There were a lot of stupid things that were said, but yeah, that was the judges still were kind of figuring things out. I think the judges were kind of torn. Like, so half the judges were judging it like it was a bowl contest, and then the other half was judging it like it was like a normal park contest. So there was this like weird gray area, and yeah, that was really strange. That's really all I can say about it. I don't really know much other than that, but it was definitely like the talk of the X Games was that contest.
Yeah, it definitely was, a pretty big thing that year. And something that Escamilla and I talked about when he was on a while back was the whole like judging thing, and that he truly believes that, in order to judge fairly, you need to be able to ride that course and like really get down in there and look at the different things throughout the course, rather than just being a judge and not being able to ride or anything. That was something that he's always really concerned about, but I don't know how much of that is true. Obviously, X Games, they don't really mess around with that. They really try and find people that, know what they're talking about for sure, I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something that really speaks out to me is that you just have such an awesome all-around style on a bike. No matter what you ride, you do it really well, whether it be blasting a set of trails with your endless dirt jump tricks, big ice picks down huge handrails, or your stylish bowl or park riding. Do you think it's important as a rider to step out of your comfort zone and really try to be able to like ride anything?
Yes. I think that versatility goes a long way. I think to be adaptable is probably the most important part of being a pro bike rider. I think that's a mentality that's kind of lost on today's generation, because you have pro bike riders that are getting paid by companies to represent their brand, and they can't do like the big sometimes. I'm talking like there's pro like guys that are get paid to ride street, and they can't clear a box jump or ride like a normal, like a smaller set of trails. I think that's kind of weird. But then they might think that I wouldn't be pro because I can't do a feeble to hard winning or whatever. But I think you should at least know the basics. You should know how to ride to to call yourself a pro. I mean, I don't want to sound like a dick here, but yeah, I think that being versatile is super important, and I appreciate the compliments. I started out as a jumper. I've always ridden trails, ridden jumps, and it's easy, I think, to go from riding jumps to other aspects. I think going from there to riding skate parks was a really easy transition, because most of riding a skate park was jumping. And then street was always kind of weird for me. I think I always just had the basics on street, and I would, go on trips with the companies that I rode for, and, the basics aren't very impressive when you do them on something small. So I would just kind of look for something that was like scaled bigger, that I could just do a basic trick down, and it makes it look more impressive. I would not call myself a good street rider, but I definitely maybe tried. I tried to make it look like I was good, and a lot of times I had to be pretty brave.
I think that, your specific style within street riding is kind of lost on this generation of BMX, however. I feel like a lot of kids really focus on being super technical, which is like, it's fine and all, and I get it, because that's technically harder. You know, there's a lot more going on with what you're doing. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of people that really send huge stuff, you know? Um, but I think that like being able to go fast at something and be like, you know, really scared about it is something that like when you do land it, it is such a big deal, whether it be just to you or, you know, it's something that nobody's ever done before. It's huge, right? And I don't know. I feel like it's kind of lost on the generation nowadays, in my opinion, at least.
Maybe. Tech is in though. Yeah, it's like you said, everyone wants to be super technical and have like the crazy lines with 1,000 tricks jammed in and do it flawlessly. And I can't stand a clip where it looks like it took the dude like all day to film it. It just that sounds bad because I've been in that position, but it just I'd much rather see some speed and I don't know. Of course, I come from a different generation. I'm not trying to knock anybody's riding style. Do what you want to do, but yeah, it's tech is what's hot right now for sure.
Yeah, and then going back on the style part of everything, you know, you were mentioning that like if you're a pro rider, you should be able to do the basics within like, you know, different stylish like or not, sorry, the basics within pretty much everything. You should try and be somewhat well-rounded. And I think that like, you know, myself, I like to say that I'm an all-around rider. I really like riding pretty much everything. You can take me to a set of dirt jumps and I will have like the best day ever, go and ride a vert ramp, and you know I'll try my best. I'll definitely air over coping. I'll drop in and everything. And I think it is just one of those things that like it's really important to you as a rider to learn how to do everything because it opens up so many more opportunities. You know, like I've been on plenty of filming trips with my crew and like we'll show up somewhere and it's something that somebody just has no experience riding and they're just having a terrible time and they can't even really try it yet and they don't feel comfortable with it. But had they really, you know, tried it beforehand, they probably would have had such a better time. At least in my mind, you know, it makes BMX a lot more fun if you can try everything, I guess.
Yeah, like, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but yeah, I think versatility is very, very important and important to me, anyways. Like if I was a team manager and I was picking people to be on the team, like I would try to go for the guys that could just shred anything.
Yeah. So I want to talk about an opening clip that you have. It's actually in your part from Kinks Squash It. The part starts off with you looking at a gap to pegs down a very steep 23 stair handrail. You end up taking a pretty bad slam and after missing your front peg. You end up catching an upright and it kind of like catapults you forward. I just wanted to ask if this was your first attempt on the rail, how many times you had kind of went to look at it, if it was something that you just found right away.
I've driven by that rail countless times. It's only about 20 minutes from my house, and I'd dreamed of doing the gap to double down that rail. I just never had a reason to do it. We were filming for Squash It, and I was like, okay, it's the perfect opportunity. The whole squad's going to be here. I'll have a legit filmer. We'll get a couple angles. I knew it was going to be scary. So, the day of, we went to it, we looked at it, and it didn't seem like it was out of the realm, out of my skill set. Like I knew I could do it, and I was so nervous. That thing's huge, and it's kind of a flat hop. Like when you do a gap to rail, usually you're gapping down to the rail, but this was only like a curb height drop. So I had to like gap about 5 feet, and you didn't really go down. So you still had to like bunny hop up and make sure you locked into the rail. So I actually, after a couple of run-ups, I did the gap to rail, landed perfect on the rail, but came off about 3 steps short, drug a foot. I was like, oh my God, like, me and the crew were going crazy because, I'd almost done it. And after that, my confidence was super high. I was like, okay, going to go back to the top of the stairs, take another run up, and then I'm just going to do this thing. Because I felt like I got this 100%. And yeah, sure enough, everyone only remembers the clip at the intro because of the slam. But like I actually did make it down that one time before, but I drug a foot. But yeah, I remember my front peg missing, and I just I remember the thoughts going through my head. I was just like, I can't believe my front peg just missed. And then it was like you said, I got catapulted to the bottom of the stairs and got a little concussion from that one. But all in all, like I was pretty lucky on that. Like the concussion wasn't that bad, and I had no other like serious injuries out of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is like such a crazy crash, and to just end up with a concussion is even crazier. Like it's really fast. You're going down a very very steep rail, and video never does anything justice, right? Like it already looks insane and huge, but like the fact that it's a 23 stair rail too is insane. Like, yeah, it's hard to believe that you basically walked away without anything other than a concussion.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't a bad concussion. I've had, unfortunately, I've had a handful of concussions, and that was not the worst one. I got over it pretty quick too. Like 2 weeks later, I was riding.
Wow, that's actually pretty crazy. So in that clip, you were actually wearing a helmet, and you have been for a couple years now. It really shows why you should wear one, whether it be on a big setup like that or something smaller that you're comfortable on. At what point did you make the decision to switch from not wearing a helmet to wearing one?
Well, to go back on that clip, the gap to rail, I didn't actually hit my head. If you notice in the video, like my elbow takes most of the impact, but I didn't have any scratches on my helmet, and the force of my body hitting the pavement just caused such a blow to, like, coming to an abrupt stop like that. That's what kind of knocked me out. It wasn't actually hitting my head, but I started wearing a helmet probably early in 2009 because I was after Mike Aiken's injury. I think a lot of people kind of realized how fragile we all are and how real things can get with head injuries. So I would say after his injury and watching Mike go through that whole thing and seeing the way that it impacted him and his family, I remember thinking, like, yeah, I'm going to start wearing a helmet full time now. Because I'd always been, like, off and on. But I was like, yeah, it's time to start wearing a helmet more. And I'd gotten married in 2010, and that was, like, really what sealed the deal. I was like, okay, I have other people that are counting on me. My wife and I wanted to start a family, and I was like, I can't be selfish anymore. I even if I look like a total nerd or whatever, like it at least provides a little bit of protection. I have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I did want to mention is, definitely Mike Aiken's crash was awful. Like, it's so crazy, and especially that it was on something that he had done like 100 times is what I had heard, or it was something that was just so average, and it was like something he'd do almost every day. I never actually figured out.
It wasn't. I wouldn't call it average. He was doing a 360 can tire grab over like kind of like a 28-foot set. So it was a big set of doubles at Posh.
Okay, sorry.
I wouldn't call it average. Now, I had seen him do that trick countless times, virtually flawless. But I mean, the scale was just so much bigger, and yeah, the circumstances were, a lot gnarlier with going that fast through the woods and hitting jumps that big. So yeah, I would definitely say it was not average. Maybe for Mike, but for any other normal human being, I would say it was pretty gnarly. And another thing with the helmet situation is, I kind of felt like everyone was going to start wearing helmets after that, because if you knew Mikey back then, like, Mike was the most naturally gifted, talented rider ever. And if something like that could happen to him, it could happen to anybody. And I was really surprised that a lot of people didn't learn from that, and they just kind of went on being naive. But yeah, to me and a lot of my friends, like, that was a huge wake up call.
Yeah, and then, a couple of years later, we had the very tragic crash with Brett Bansewicz when he was only like 17 years old, and that one's really affected him for the rest of his life. And, he's made incredible progress since then. Like, he's doing whips over hips and everything now, like, insane. But you can see how long it's taken him to get to that point, And he was wearing a helmet too, from what I've heard.
Yeah, you know what? I saw those clips that day. I saw on Instagram he posted some stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, it was really good riding. I definitely better than a lot of the stuff I can do. But yeah, I was really impressed with how far he's come. But yeah, it has taken a really long time.
Yeah, and then obviously the most recent one, and I would say probably the biggest one within BMX, happened to a friend of yours, Scotty Kramer. And, I just got to say, I think that nobody could, like, have that tragic of a crash and that, like, have so much done to them and be able to walk around other than somebody like Scotty, Like, he's back on a bike only 3 years later. He's made incredible progress. And I think that it's not just because, like, I don't know, my main thing is it's because of the person Scotty is, in my eyes, at least.
100%. Yeah, I mean, Scotty's another guy, much like Aiken, just so naturally talented. And to see him go through that, and then to see his resilience and his strength and the way he's been able to inspire people through the injury has just been, like, so amazing. I mean, Scotty's my hero. I've known him since, forever, but I've gotten a lot closer to him over the past few years, just doing the commentary gig, and learning more about his story and about, like, the stuff that he deals with on a daily basis is just so gnarly. And the way he's able to, like, just continue on and continue to be an inspiration is it's incredible. Like, like I said before, he's my hero. He's just an incredible person.
Yeah, and I think a big thing too that, like, really helps share his story is obviously his YouTube channel. Like, it's huge. It's by far the biggest YouTube channel, like, in BMX. And I've watched those videos every day because he's always such a great, like, positive guy. And I just love the fact that, like, everything that he does is so, like, there's never anything that's, like, I don't know, negative. He's always a positive dude.
Yeah. From what I've heard, I mean, he has his moments where he's not positive, and he's not as upbeat as he seems on the YouTube channel. Like, he'll come out and say that, and he's like, there's some days where I just don't feel like doing it. But he's able to, like, get out of that. If it takes him like a day or so, he's able to get out of that mentality and get back into a more positive state of mind and continue on. But yeah, it's funny. I've known Scotty pre-accident and now after the accident, and he's always amazed me.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Scotty.
Oh, definitely.
So, to switch up topics a little bit, while researching for this, I learned that your first job was working for your brother mowing lawns. I actually mowed lawns for a summer to help pay for my first BMX bike from a bike shop. And it was a red Diamondback bike. I don't know the model, but it was like, I think like a $300 bike at the time. And that was definitely a lot of money for like, a kid who's 13 years old. And, I think it was one of those things that it really helped push the way that I look at life, I guess. It really was a good example of like, if you want something, you got to work for it and you got to go for it, I guess, instead of like having it given to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, how old was I? I was, I think, 14 when I started doing yard work with my brother. I wanted to go to Woodward really bad. And my mom told me that if I'd saved half the money, back then, it was $600 a week. So I had to save up $300. So I worked for, a couple of weeks in the summer, just, mowing lawns, weed whacking, and doing stuff like that, just to save the money to, make half the money to go to Woodward. And then I went later that summer.
Wow, that's incredible, eh? And now, like, you actually are probably pretty close to Woodward because you're in Pennsylvania.
Well, at this time, I lived in North Carolina.
Okay.
I grew up down south in a town called Cary, North Carolina, which is right outside of Raleigh.
So what made you decide to move to Pennsylvania? Is it the trail scene there?
I grew up just I used to watch the Push video, 1201, Anthem, all these videos that really highlighted the scene in Pennsylvania, and I always wanted to visit and try it out and see if I liked it. And right before I moved up, I was 20 years old when I moved up. There was this video that came out. It was called Empire East, and it was this crew out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and they had these great trails, and all the guys are like my age. So I went up and like Chris Bennett lived there, and I went up and stayed with him for about a month. And at the end of that month, I was like, "Hey, man, I think I might move here." And he was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to move to Erie, Pennsylvania." And so yeah, I moved up. I was a pro rider. I was doing okay, so I was making money, and there wasn't anything that was like holding me back, like in North Carolina. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try it out. I'll do it for a year. So I moved up to Pennsylvania. We signed a year lease, and now I've been in PA for almost 18 years now.
Wow. That's incredible. And like, a lot of the stuff around there, at least for like the parks and there's a big trail scene there, really speaks to the way that you've like, continued on with riding, I would say.
I definitely think it helped. I think if I'd stayed in North Carolina, I think my career would have continued, but I don't know how it's been. A lot of my friends were kind of moving on to other things, whether it was like university or joining the workforce or just getting out of riding and getting more interested in girls. Like, so I was riding by myself a lot when I lived in North Carolina, and I wanted other people to ride with, and I wanted to ride bigger trails and kind of expand my riding that way. So I definitely think that it added a lot more to my career and added a lot more to my riding, and I think it made me more whole as a rider, just moving to Pennsylvania and riding trails with the guys I was riding trails with.
Yeah, and then so the trails that you were riding were probably like Posh, like you mentioned earlier, and then Caddy Woods is close to there, is it not?
No.
Oh, never
Posh
mind.
and Caddy are on. If you look at a map, the state of Pennsylvania, Posh and Caddy are on the far right-hand side of Pennsylvania. They're kind of more on like the Philadelphia side, whereas I was living in western Pennsylvania, and when I moved to PA, I moved to Erie, which is like the most northwestern city in Pennsylvania. And then I lived there for a year, and then I moved south to Pittsburgh, which is like southwestern PA. And I moved in with Pa-laver.
Wow. And how far is Imperial Park from you? That park, like, there was so many good clips of yourself as well as Brian Yeagle in Anthem 2 riding that like crazy bull.
Yeah, Imperial it's on the other side of the city. It's on the other side of Pittsburgh from me, kind of out near the airport. That was our first concrete park here in Pittsburgh. So, gosh, it's like a 45-minute drive without traffic, but there's always traffic. So sometimes it can take you like an hour and a half to get there. But yeah, since it was our first concrete park, we rode there like every day. It's not the best park to ride. It's kind of a lot of times you feel like you're pumping uphill to hit certain things, but it's so weird. I think it made us all like kind of better bull riders because it's just so hard to ride. Like if you anyone that goes there for the first time usually hates it, but like the more you go, you'll like figure things out. And especially if you see Brian Yeagle ride there, man, it's like something else. He makes it look so effortless and so good, but it's a tough park to ride for sure.
How long has that park been around for?
I think they built it maybe 2008. So yeah, it's 12 years old.
Wow. Yeah, and like, you know, like you were saying, watching Brian ride that park is ridiculous. Like the transfers that he was doing in Anthem 2 are insane. Like there's this big vert wall thing, and he was like airing off of that over like I guess it would be like a doorway into it, like just the craziest stuff.
Yeah, and if you ever ride that park, if you see that stuff in person, it doesn't make any sense. It's like how is he doing this? But that speaks to how talented Yeagle is.
Does Yagle still ride?
No, he doesn't ride BMX anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I know that he also had a bad crash, did he not?
He had a long string of bad crashes. He had some really bad luck with injuries, and Brian's the type of guy that if he's going to ride BMX, he's going to ride as hard and as fast as he possibly can. And that's not necessarily good as you're getting older and you're getting hurt more. So I think he was just getting fed up that he A, was getting hurt so much, and B, couldn't ride how he wanted to ride. So he just called it. He was like, I'm over it. And he started, he went to nursing school, and now he's a nurse here in Pittsburgh. And he still rides mountain bikes on occasion. And from what I hear, he's pretty gnarly on a mountain bike. I wish he did ride BMX because he is a savage. Like he is like, I think, one of the gnarliest guys.
Yeah, his Anthem 2 part is actually one of my favorite video parts of all time. Like that whole video, to be honest, is my favorite video part of all time. And I would like to talk a little bit about it. So you also had a part in Anthem 2. It's got to be so crazy to film with literally the biggest names in BMX at that time. People like Mike Aiken, Brian Foster, Sean Burns, Clint Reynolds. And that's just to name a few. There was so many more that were just crazy.
And yeah, I grew up on Stu Johnson's videos as it was. Lights Out, 1201, those, and then of course Anthem. Those were the videos that really shaped me as a rider, and he made all those, or at least contributed to all those. So Stu asked me, he's like, hey, I'm gonna do a second Anthem. Do you want to have a part? And my jaw hit the floor. He asked me in 2003 to have a part in Anthem 2, and then we didn't start filming till like 4 years later. So he just kind of put it off because he was working for props and he had a lot of other things going on. So finally, like, he's like, hey, I remember him calling me up. He's like, we're doing it this year. We're going to make Anthem 2. You're going to have a part. And then he kind of told me all the riders that were going to have parts. And I was like, yeah, count me in. A little behind the scenes, I only went on 2 trips to film for that video. And like, I didn't ride with a lot of the other guys. I was doing a lot of contests back then. I was filming for other video parts. So I didn't have a lot of time to film for Anthem 2. So on any trip I went on with him, which was, like I said, only 2, I was like, made sure that I was like going hard. And he also came to Pittsburgh as well to film. So, yeah, I was really, really happy with how my part turned out, especially because I didn't have as much time as the other guys. All in all, I only filmed for like a couple weeks for that part. But I was, like I said, I was really stoked on how it came out, and I was just stoked to be involved with it because it was, Anthem 1 was so iconic. And then people had been waiting for Anthem 2 for so long, and then it finally comes out and it lives up to the hype. And just to be a part of that and to like still be talking about it, and that came out in 2010. To be talking about it 10 years later is just really cool.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's been, called the best video in BMX history, like, which is crazy. And then, in my opinion, it is 100% the best video within BMX just because it involves everything, It really had, like, the core things in BMX, You have your awesome, fast street riding. You have, like, insane flow with trail riding, and the park riding that was in there, too, was amazing, I think that when it comes to park riding, at least nowadays, it's really hard to film a good-looking part with a lot of flow through those parks. But everybody in that video, Aiken was definitely like, there's a clip of him doing this crazy 540 thing over a hip, and it looks insane. And then obviously that was like where I saw my favorite Aiken trick, which of course is the 360 can tire grab. Like, just so much style,
Yeah, that was gosh, he was on a whole different level back then. He like the first trip that he went on was like this trip out to PA, and he had just won Dew Tour out in Salt Lake, and he was just on a whole other level, like going higher and doing better tricks than everybody. I don't want to say better tricks, maybe cooler tricks that were like exclusive Mike Aiken style tricks. You couldn't touch him back then. Like, he was just
and that's
so
still
gnarly.
It's still a trick to this day that I don't really know anybody else that ever has done it, the 360 can tire grab. And I gotta say, even if they did do it, they definitely didn't have as much style as Aiken.
No one has as much style.
Yeah, exactly. So how long did that video actually take to film? You said it was about 4 years just to get started on it. But then after the filming started, how long do you think? Like a summer, maybe?
No, he put in some serious time with it. He, I want to say all in all, it was probably like a 2-year project. Because, people, like, there were guys in the video that got hurt, like Jeff Slattery got hurt, like, on the first trip, and Stu really wanted him to have a part, so he, like, waited for him to get better and then film his part. Yeagel's part, I think, took a long time, just because Yeagel's a hard guy to film, because he's just kind of elusive. You just have to be ready. So, like, Stu went on when he was on a trip with Yeagle, Stu just had to be ready at all times, because Yeagle will just do stuff without telling you. He'll do stuff without filming it. Or he'll do something at a park or at the trails that's like, that'll blow your mind, and then like Stu would be like, "Hey, do you want to film that?" And Brian would be like, "No, not really." So it definitely was. I would say about 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer, but I think a good guess as to how long it took from beginning to end.
I think that that's a really good time span for a video, you know, like the videos that I've released, both of them took me about 3 years to make. And it was something where, you know, we're just normal dudes. We don't have the time to just get out and ride every day, but we seriously like, I can't believe the amount of stuff that we filmed, especially in my last video, Space Goats, like just crazy. Like everybody in the video did their best, which was awesome. And it really, you know, those guys are all family to me. Like it meant so much to me that they would even put in the effort for a video. And I think that when it comes to filming these videos, you get a lot closer with the, you know, like I guess quote teammates in it or just the crew that you're filming with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you're going on trips with these guys and you're like stuffed in a van for hours at a time, it really does become like a family.
Yeah, exactly. So was it kind of, you know, was it difficult to try and live up to the hype of the other people in the video? Like another great name from that video was Mark Mulville, and his part was just incredible. Like there was only dirt jump clips in there, and like I'm pretty sure most of the tricks were all combos, which is even crazier.
Um, as far as like living up to the hype, not really, because like I said, I didn't go on many trips with a lot of the other guys. Like, I didn't actually. I went on one trip with Mulville. He was on the trip we did in Pennsylvania. But other than that, I didn't see a lot of the footage that these guys were filming, so I didn't really know what other guys were doing. But I knew just based on what all the hype that was like surrounding the video. I was like, I just want to do my best. I just want to like, you know, be the best, be my best self. I guess I should say is, you know, try to really put on and do my best riding, which kind of sounds cheesy to say, but I didn't want to, you know, have the weak part in the video.
No, completely understandable. You know, as I was saying, that's seriously one of my favorite videos of all time, and you know, it really shows how much effort everybody put into it. Do you think there would ever be an Anthem 3 video? And do you think that it would ever, you know, if it did happen, it would be really difficult to collect a crew of like serious good riders that could kind of live up to the last two videos?
I guess that's more of a question for. I would love to see it get done because I think Anthem 1 and Anthem 2 captured the same vibe, which I think still exists today. It's just it might take a little bit longer, it might be a little bit harder, but I think there is a place for it. But I think that's really up to Stu, and I think it would have to be, you know, completely done in the way that Stu does his videos. But I think it's definitely going to take some time, or maybe he just wants to let it rest and just not oversaturate it.
Yeah, exactly. So how did
but
you?
I think he could. I think he could do it. I think it would just take some time.
Yeah, I would wonder who would actually be in the video. Who do you think, like, if you had to name off like 3 names right now, who would be really good in that video? Who would you say?
Oh gosh, boy, Corey Walsh, probably like Matt Cordova, Sergio Leos. I think that's a good 3 names. I think I could see holding it down.
Yeah, Corey actually, his family lives like about an hour from where I live, which is pretty crazy. Corey's like, he's a local legend around here, you know? Like, insane.
That dude, yeah, that dude rips.
It's so crazy to see, like, you know, just the raw talent and style that that guy has. Especially with this most recent video, like, where they took that kicker and he wall rode, like, that building, like, literally corner or pocket wall ride. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, that dude's gnarly.
Yeah, shout out to Corey. Hey. So I've got a couple clips here that I wanted to show and just ask for a little bit of a backstory. The first one is this tail whip ender from Wide Awake Nightmare. So I'm going to pull that up. Do you want to basically just give us the story behind it?
Oh, yeah, that's a random one. That's out in Wyoming, and I was out in Salt Lake City for a trip back in I think it was 2003, and yeah, we went and rode this. Matt Berenger knew of this. It's like a big drainage pipe for this big lake, and you can ride the pipe, and we spent some time out there, and we were riding it, and it was like an uphill pedal to like air up that vert wall, and yeah, I aired up it a couple times. I did like a turn down, maybe a tabletop, and I was like, tail up airs were still relatively new to me back then. So I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna try to tail up it, and like, it's 2003. Everyone's like, no way, and I'm like, yeah. So like, I tried it, I think 3 or 4 times, and I was exhausted from pedaling up that damn thing. So yeah, I think I got it on like the 3rd or 4th try, and yeah, I was stoked on that because it's so random. Just that we were just riding that pipe and to do something. I thought it was like a really cool ender. It was like kind of, I don't think it was kind of like out of character for me, like film an ender like that.
Yeah, and it's such a big like drainage pipe too. And like, it
Actual like vert part of the quarter, and it was like I would reach max speed like halfway, but if I stopped pedaling, I would lose all my speed. So I just keep pedaling. That's what I remember most about that clip is just how exhausting it was.
wow. Yeah, man, pedaling uphill at something is the worst too. Um
Yeah.
yeah, so I've got another clip here. This is your Fufanu ender on the fence for squash it. So, yeah, it's just such a big gnarly like gap into it.
That's another one similar to that rail slam that we talked about earlier. That's my local skate park. I live only 3 miles away from that park, and I'd look at that Fufanu all the time. I was like, oh, I bet I could get on top of that thing. And it was like one of those things that kind of haunted me. And it was, again, like, okay, as soon as I have like a good crew here and I'm able to film it, I'm going to just try it. And I didn't expect it to take as long as it did. 'Cause it took I took a lot of slams on that one, and I was pretty stoked on getting that one done. And since then, since that video's come out, it's become like this meme that I see on Instagram from time to time, where it's like, "Don't give up the fight, always persevere," like one of those things. And
Yeah.
it has me like slamming over and over, and then I finally pull it. And I always thought that was kind of ridiculous. There's like some guy that has like 1.3 million followers on Instagram, and he posted that like, "Never give up," and I'm like, dude, it's just so ridiculous, the world of social media.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, eh? Especially if they're not into like BMX or skating or anything like that.
Well, and then I would read the comments on his Insta post, and people are like, "Yeah, man, you never give up. You keep fighting and trying until you get what you want." It's like, come on. I was trying to foo-foo this fence. Like, I didn't see a lot of, you know, inspiration to, people investing in real estate. Like, it was just, it's weird when that pops up like every couple months too. But the trick itself, like I was stoked to get that done, just because I ride that park in the summers like every other day, and I'd always look at it. And yeah, I was stoked to get that one completed.
It's insane to like, finally do something that you've looked at for so long. Personally for me, like there was this huge rail hop, just like flat to flat over the side of a kinked rail. It's probably like a 12-foot drop from the top step to the very flat bottom. And that was something I looked at for like a full summer. And then like over the winter, I even went there and looked at it a couple times just to really like, I guess, figure out how I was going to do it. And then the day that I was turning 19, I went out and did it. And that was like, that's seriously the highlight of my BMX career, I would say. And I feel like,
This is great.
yeah, it's definitely something similar to what you were doing there, obviously. Like, it's just something you see and you know you kind of have to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, really similar too, because like my whole crew is there, which was awesome. I guess it's always nice to have like a good amount of people with you to really like, I don't know, egg you on and get you excited to try something.
Oh, of course.
And let's see here. So there's another clip here. This is a really random one. This is a wall ride can from Safety First. So I'm gonna pull that clip up. Do you know what clip I'm talking about?
I think so. Is it at night?
This. Yeah, here. I'm gonna pull it up. Let's see. And right before it, there's actually a couple clips that are really cool. So there's a wall ride to tail whip, and I think a wall ride to table. Yeah, a nice table, and then a wall ride to tail whip. And then here we go. So how did you get into doing that trick? Because to me, it's something you never those cans anymore.
Um, I could do like a couple different wall ride variations. I could do like wall ride the turn down, wall ride invert. I could do wall ride the tail whips, and like I was getting comfortable just like kind of airing on a wall. And I love a no-footed can. And I was like, I bet it'd be pretty cool to do a no-footed can out of the wall. And I just kind of worked on it. And I wouldn't say it's a very hard trick, but I like the trick a lot. In fact, I did back in the day. They used to have these pig contests, like like pig in basketball. Like if I make a shot and you miss it, then you get the P. We play like Jay Miron and put together this. It's called the pig contest, and so I got to pick my own trick that I wanted to do, and I did a wall ride to no footed can, and Alistair Witten had to do that trick, and he had never done a wall ride to no footed can before, and he just like tried it and did it first try. So I don't think it's like necessarily a hard thing, but I just like I said, I like a no footed can, so I that clip. That's a wall. That's at Harvard University in Massachusetts.
Really? That's kind of
Yeah,
cool. And
yeah, we were there just on a kink trip, and we were all like, I think there was probably like 10 of us sessioning that wall, and that was just like one of the clips that came out of it.
yeah, it's such a cool clip, man. I really like that. You know, you never see wall ride to topside can like ever. So I guess it's something that really speaks out about your style, you know? And like the cans that you do are so awesome. Like they're just very stretched out. You've got them dialed like honestly best looking no foot cans in BMX.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I actually only have one more question for you. So my last question that I kind of want to end things off with is what advice would you give to the younger BMX riders of today?
I feel like I get asked this question a lot. Well, for starters, wear a helmet, be safe. I don't think my answer has ever really changed for this question. It's just try to just enjoy it. Don't overstep your bounds. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy it for what it is, because you're really, as cliche as it is to say, like you're only young once, and just try to enjoy the time that you have on your bike with your friends, and take it from there.
That's a really good answer. You know, I really like that. I think it is so true within BMX that really don't focus on the bullshit and just have fun, you know? Just get really involved with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And is there anything that you wanted to end everything off with, or is that everything?
There's nothing really important that feel like I need to say. I appreciate you taking the time to ask me some questions, and I had a really good time talking about Anthem too. Not a lot of people really ask a lot about that, but yeah, that was really cool to think back on some of that. Um,
Yeah, it's it
I,
again, like I said, seriously my favorite video. I think that anybody that gets into BMX riding, I think it should be one of the videos that they watch. I don't think it should be the first video they watch because in my eyes it's the best BMX video ever. So if you watch that, then it's kind of difficult to go to something else, you know? Like I mean, every video is different and every video is great in its own way, but I just think the riders that were in that video, the clips, the music choice, just everything about it was so BMX and so like I guess just perfect in its own way.
well, yeah, thanks again. I was very happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm gonna end this off. Don't go anywhere. Yeah, I just got to. I'll chat with you right after I end this off. So everybody, thank you for joining the stream today. This will be released on all streaming platforms if you want to give it a second listen. Yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow with another episode. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Sure.